Country bumpkins? Who had the strongest army in the world? The British. If war broke out with the colonies, the British seemed certain to win. America didn't even have an army. Instead, each colony had a militia, a ragtag assortment of men from 16 to 65 years old that drilled once a week on village greens. Militiamen were mainly concerned with defending their own villages and colonies. They had no uniforms and little knowledge of war. Some of them didn't even have guns. The British laughed. How could these country bumpkins put up a fight? Most British officers were gentlemen who had bought their positions. Some wealthy men even bought them for their sons. If his father paid enough money, even a baby could be listed as the commander of a regiment. In America, the system was different. American militiamen elected their own officers from among their friends and neighbors. They called them by their first names and didn't bother to salute. No one expected it. The Americans could not begin to match the British in equipment. Militiamen had to provide their own weapons. Most had only a musket, a horn to hold gunpowder, a mold for making bullets, and a small supply of ammunition. Officers sometimes carried swords as well. As war loomed closer, the militias practiced loading their muskets every day, but they didn't practice firing because they didn't have enough ammunition. When General Gage's redcoats arrived to punish Boston for the Tea Party, some of the militiamen became Minutemen. Minutemen had to keep their weapons ready at all times. They were supposed to be ready to fight with only 1 minute's warning. The British grew to dread the sight of them. Minutemen seemed to appear from nowhere whenever their drummer sounded the alarm. Still, if America was really going to fight, what she had to have was a real army. The need came sooner than anyone expected. Some towns organized alarm companies. These were made up of old men and young boys who would defend the town if it was attacked while the militia was away. Sort of like a secondary guard. The people who were too old or too young to join the militia, they would help defend the town. The Brown Bess, a musket used by both the Americans and the British, could be fired rapidly, 3 or 4 shots a minute. But it was so hard to aim that no one really tried. A soldier would point it in the general direction of the opposing army, turn his head away in case the gun blew up, and squeeze the trigger. If he was lucky, some of the enemy fell. Benjamin Franklin suggested that the colonial army use bows and arrows instead of muskets. They are quieter, he said, didn't make clouds of smoke, and required no ammunition. But nobody took his idea seriously. Later, Franklin organized a smuggling ring in London to supply guns to the colonists. Here's those Minutemen, by the way, like running to fight as soon as they hear the alarm. A gang led by Paul Revere stole guns and cannons from the British. They sneaked them out of Boston and hid them in the countryside.